It was almost exactly a year ago when we interviewed an innovative state representative along with a pioneering state treasurer with their plan to bring constitutional currency to the great state of Utah. It was episode 282 with the title, A Golden Opportunity. The innovative representative, our dear friend Ken Ivory, who has appeared in the economic war room many times. And the pioneering treasurer, another dear friend, Marlo Oaks, who has been winning so many battles for liberty as a leader in the State Financial Officers Foundation, SFOF. A year ago, these gentlemen shared how they were going to take the concepts laid out in my book, Pirate Money, and bring them to reality for the good people of Utah. This is monumental. They set out to make gold and silver useful as money for ordinary people. They plotted to give Utah authority to protect that money for citizens and also from capital gains taxes, federal intrusion, and inflation. I knew it was an audacious move, and certainly the monetary forces of Washington and Wall Street would be in opposition. Our heroes would not be deterred, however. And guess what? They're making enormous progress toward the ultimate goal with many wins along the way. They've been putting on a master class on how state officials can defend constitutional rights, and their innovative approach is very popular. Utah started with initial legislation last year that allowed the state treasurer to look into investing a portion of their rainy day fund into precious metals. And the explanation for it was brilliant. Keep in mind that Treasurer Oaks is not a politician, not an ordinary one. He holds the CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst designation. That's the same as me. And he comes from the investment side and thus understands when rainy day funds are needed, it's generally a time of greater economic difficulty. And that's precisely a time when gold shines. I remember the chart that he showed to the legislatures. Gold generally appreciates in recessions. It's brilliant. He won the legislature over with logic, wit, and charm, but the legislation was actually entered by Representative Ken Ivory. And he's not a politician either, not a normal one. I see him as a Constitution-loving attorney on a mission to take America back to the founding principles. I worked with Ken for years. He even hired me as a consultant to the Utah Fiscal Risk Commission. Even before I called him about our plans for constitutional currency, he was a leader in getting Utah to declare gold and silver as legal tender. That's about the time I first met him, around 2011, just as Glenn Beck was exposing my economic warfare research and my first bestseller, Secret Weapon, was about to hit bookstores. When I called Ken and told him we were going to make a national push, he said, I want in and we'll make Utah first. Ken came to our summit at Liberty Hawk Ranch and got his friend Treasurer Oaks along with his colleague Brittany Griffin on the line wanting to learn more. I remember that first conversation. Since then, I've been to Utah multiple times, and with Representative Ivory promoting the legislation, Treasurer Oaks providing expertise, they passed the first step, HB 348 last year. As a result, Utah can now hold money in the form of precious metals. I participated in the Utah study, and I believe it showed conclusively that gold and silver can be used as money legally and beneficially. Now, what they did was they had testimony for new legislation. Let's take a look at some of the testimony from our Utah heroes. First, Ken Ivory.
It simply allows a state vendor or service provider to choose to receive payment in gold from the state instead of dollars. And for the state, all it means is setting up another account like a bank account. There are a number of service providers, a couple of them are here and online that can speak to this, but the state can push dollars, the recipient receives gold. And so they're able to have gold that's immediately stored, secured, audited, and the other things that are in the bill. And that really is the simplicity of the bill, but it provides a foundation that we build on as we look to store the value of the earnings and savings of the state and of the people of the state.
Now let's hear from Treasurer Oaks just a couple of weeks ago.
I really appreciate Representative Ivory's work on this issue. As directed by HB 348 in last session, we conducted a study and created a report, the Precious Metals Study, and had several meetings over the course of last year and looked at one of the key components was this transactional platform. And so really that's kind of the basis of what we're talking about with HB 306. The platform could facilitate real-time transactions, dollar conversions, and secure gold storage in Utah under strict safety standards. Several precious metals work group members and presenters in meetings highlighted that a state-utilized gold-based transactional platform could offer citizens an alternative payment system, helping to safeguard their purchasing power against the erosion caused by inflation more effectively than reliance on the dollar alone. For a century and a half, gold was money in the United States. However, in 1974, the IRS, by policy, not by law or constitutional amendment, began taxing gold and silver as a capital asset and not as a currency. This means if an individual buys gold, whether in the form of coins, bars, or through a gold-based exchange-traded fund, any gain made when selling that gold, even if only because the value of the dollar went down, is subject to capital gains tax. Furthermore, gold is considered a collectible under IRS policy, subjecting it to the highest capital gains tax rate in the United States. For those who would use gold as money, this tax makes the proposition less attractive. If an individual experiences an increase in the value of their gold holdings and then chooses to transact using that gold, they are currently subject to capital gains tax on the appreciated value. This creates a barrier to using gold on a frequent transactional basis, since each transaction creates a taxable event. This is why advocates for gold-based platforms push for changes to capital gains tax treatment on gold. If gold were fully recognized as money, it should not be subject to capital gains tax.
I totally agree with Treasurer Oaks. It was my pleasure and honor to testify in favor of that bill, along with people like Larry Hilton from the Utah Precious Metals Association. But what impacted me the most was the testimony of the grassroots. Let's listen to what they had to say.
My name is Brooke Stevens, and I'm the Civic Engagement Director for Utah Moms for America. And we support this bill. We love that it gives us the ability to have confidence in the future for our children, especially when it comes to purchasing homes. $17,000 isn't a lot, but the same amount of gold. And so it gives more security as we plan for our families.
Marianne Christensen, I'm Executive Director of Utah Legislative Watch. We're very much in support of this bill and the whole idea. So to move our assets into gold is just the prudent thing to do. We love the system that surrounds this. It used to be, I've always been taught that gold is the very best investment because it always holds its value and gains value. And it used to be you bought gold and you stuck it in a vault, you stuck it in a safe somewhere. And now they've figured out how to let us own gold and then use it like we use any other kind of currency. I think that's brilliant. I'm really excited about the idea. And so I hope you support the bill.
After that great testimony, the roll call was taken. It was unanimous, bipartisan in favor of that. It's an amazing achievement. We're close to constitutional currency in Utah. We call it pirate money because it's based in gold and silver. Arrgh. All right, we're going to have to take a break. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Utah Representative Ken Ivory about this bill. In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. choose Patriot Mobile.
Hey, Ken Ivory, welcome back to the Economic War Room.
Thanks, Kevin. It's always good to be with you.
Hey, last year, right about this time, we aired a golden opportunity for Utah, and you just flat out said, we're going to get this done, and we may do it in pieces, but Utah will be a leader. And you got past HB 348. Why last year was that bill so important, and how does it set up for what you're doing now?
Well, last year set the stage for us to begin investing in precious metals. And so that bill allowed us to invest up to 10% of our rainy day fund, $1.4 billion rainy day fund, in precious metals. And so now that we've already started, we have gold bars in a Brinks vault about 5 miles from where I'm sitting, and we've had state legislators have been able to go out and heft Utah's gold bars, and we'll have the senators out there next week. It sets the stage to understand that there's nothing crazy, unusual. In fact, this is very mainstream. It's one of the safest assets, least risk assets, that right now is doing tremendous return recently and over the past few decades. And so this is a reasonable, safe approach to protect our rainy day fund. And now it sets the stage for the future work that we're doing this year.
Yeah, well, it's powerful. It also allowed for a study that, I've been a part of studies on various topics. This wasn't, we're going to kill the idea and put it in a study. This was actual working group with some of the top people in the world, experts in banking, experts on gold, experts on the economy and so forth. And I was honored to be part of that working group. That was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it was great to have you on that working group. You added a great deal to that, Kevin. And Randy Quarles, Vice Chair of the Federal Reserve, Gary Crittenden, who, top echelons of American Express and Citigroup, our Utah Association, Bankers Association. We had folks from the governor's office, Mining Association. People didn't realize in Utah, our number one export is gold. Our number one import is gold. We have an industry that by building the payment system and industry, we raise the highest paying jobs. That also allows us to get into the strategic element, rare earth element space, because those are all in the same places with the mining that we do. And so this is an economic development, fintech opportunity that really puts Utah in a different level for economic stability going forward, let alone sound money stability, and allowing our people and our state to preserve the purchasing power of our earnings, of our savings, and not have that eroded out from under us.
Well, we've known each other a long time. It probably dates back to 2011 when you first were pushing gold and silver as legal tender, just the very beginning legislation. And then you hired me. I worked with the Utah Fiscal Risk Commission and got to write a report. So we've known each other a long time. But when you came to Liberty Hawk Ranch for the first of two summits, you've been here twice on our transactional gold to take it across the country. You stood up and said, I'm just telling you plainly, Utah is going to be in the lead. We're going to do this first. And I tell you what, you actually are in the lead, and it's been wonderful watching the systematic way you've gone about this, not just throwing everything at once, but we'll take a step here, and these are big steps that you're taking.
Yeah, I mean, it is. The timing is critical, Kevin. I mean, right now, think about this. The number 2 federal expenditure is interest on the debt. Only Social Security is a larger expense right now than interest on the debt. And the interest expense is growing 10 times faster than all the others. And so within a few short years, interest will be the number 1 federal expense. And so people on the left, on the right, we can all agree that we're leaving an inheritance to our children that is that it's a disaster. I mean, this is horrific. And none of us want to do that. And so the way that we keep our money from being eroded out from under us is to preserve that. And the founders, once again, were pretty smart folks. You go right back to Article 1, Section 10. States shall make nothing but gold and silver legal tender and payment of debts. And so getting all states to come together. I mean, I know it's kind of good-natured competition and whatever, but But setting that aside, we need all states to come together to stand for protecting the purchasing power of their people and not allowing 2%, 10% of that to be taken right out from under them in the monetization of debt. And Kevin, they're still overspending $2 trillion a year, whether it's a blue administration or a red administration. That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable that much of our hard-earned money and wealth is just taken right out from under us. And in Utah, we're not going to stand for that anymore. So we're building ways for that to be put to an end, to preserve that value with electronic gold payment systems. And then we're also looking at ways that the state builds an income in gold to prepare for the rainy days ahead.
Well, I love the fact that you are bringing your constitutional expertise and your ideas, and you're working very closely, like with our friend Rick Green at Patriot Academy and the Constitution coaches, and really taking America back to the Constitution at the grassroots level. And when I saw the testimony, I was honored to testify on behalf of your bill in the House that did pass unanimously, bipartisan, pass unanimously out of committee. And in that testimony, there were grassroots leaders. And you watch, I'm a mom, and I need this for my family. I've watched my purchasing power erode. I mean, your grassroots support on this has got to be overwhelming.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, last year, it was that grassroots support that saved the bill, quite literally. But it makes sense, right? If you think about when Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, you could buy a house for $17,000, $18,000, $19,000 or 17,000 grams of gold, either one. Today, the $18,000, $20,000 doesn't get you a down payment on the average home. That's about $600,000. But that 17,000 grams of gold, Kevin, it would buy 3 houses today. It's not that houses have gotten more expensive. It's that the dollar has just been eroded right out from under us. And so if we allow people to store their earnings and savings in what's been, you call it, God's money from the beginning of time, if we allow people to do that, well then what you buy today for $1, $10, $1,000, you can buy that same thing a year from now, a decade from now, and you store that value. And that's what central banks around the world are doing. Sovereign wealth funds are doing. We want to allow people in Utah to do that.
And you're giving it to them as a choice. It's an option. It's not a mandate. And I love what you're doing. All right, we're going to next have to take a break. But when we come back, Ken, we're going to be talking with your friend, the Treasurer Marlo Oaks. Man, you introduced me to, and he really has supercharged this effort. So thank you so much for what you're doing in Utah. And my goodness, thank you for the introduction to this great state treasurer, Marlo Oaks. We'll be right back after a break. Here's a $10 bill. It's got the picture of Alexander Hamilton on the front of it. You know, it's kind of sad. When I was 10 years old, everything that I could buy for $1 now costs about $10. That's the cost of inflation. It's just paper. It's not backed by anything. You can't exchange it for gold and silver. You used to, but you can't do that anymore. And that's unfortunate. You know, pirates wouldn't accept this. Pirates, they wanted gold and silver. Patriots, the founders of this nation, also wanted gold and silver coin. In fact, they put a provision in the Constitution, 17 words, that said states could only make gold and silver coins tender within the states. That's why I wrote this new book, Pirate Money, Discovering the Founders' Hidden Plan for Economic Justice and Defeating the Great Reset. It will explain exactly the history of money and exactly why gold and silver coins can be made modern with new technology and a useful monetary system. PirateMoneyBook.com.
Washington said paper money opens the door to every species of fraud and injustice. Jefferson said paper is poverty. Hamilton said to emit an unfunded paper as the sign of value ought not to continue a formal part of the Constitution. The founders hated paper money, so they put a pirate money clause in the Constitution for our state to use. Learn more at transactionalgold.com.
Hey, Treasurer Oaks, welcome back to the Economic War Room.
Thank you, Kevin. Good to be with you.
Well, you're a pioneer in so many areas. We've talked about ESG, we've talked about natural asset companies, and you're really fighting the fight for liberty in the state of Utah, and it's had a positive impact on the whole of the United States. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate the work that you do at Economic War Room. You know, the pirate money book, that was a really important part of our process, at least in terms of looking at gold for me, reading about some of the historical elements of gold in our economy in the United States and historically with the Spanish. I mean, it was that was an important part. So thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to work with you. The State Financial Officers Foundation, which you're a real leader in, is really, I mean, people never thought about how powerful a constitutional office it could be to be the treasurer of a state, like your other colleagues in Florida and Louisiana and Oklahoma and so forth. But you're doing great things. Hey, you had, I remember that first call we had with your colleague, Brittany Griffin. And the initial thought, and I was just writing the book that you referenced, Pirate Money, and we were talking about it, and she said, well, I just checked with your Texas State Depository, and we concluded they weren't doing everything they ought to be doing. And Utah, you said, well, let's make Utah the leader here. And that was the beginning of something really fantastic, I think.
Well, and it points to the importance of different states and how they do things. We learned a lot from the Texas example and decided there were things that we would do differently. But that was an important data point. And in fact, I had the opportunity to go down and visit the Capitol at Texas. I saw there was a vault in the basement, and I wondered, is there a vault in our basement? But we actually never ended up holding gold in Utah in the Capitol. So anyway, but it was an interesting data point.
Yeah, and then you worked with Representative Ivory. He passed this HB 348, and it ordered you to conduct a study analyzing the role of precious metals in augmenting, stabilizing, and ensuring the economic security and prosperity of the state, the families, and the residents of the state and businesses in the state. It formed a working group, and I was honored to be a part of that. What was that like? I mean, you pulled some amazing people together to look at this.
Yeah, I was really grateful for the participation, really, from both the legislature and then within the community, people in Utah that have great experience, financial experience, and of course you with your experience in looking at money and how gold and silver can be used in an economy, and really some of the critical elements like a transactional platform you covered in Pirate Money, and that was really helpful.
Well, you had several representatives, Ken Ivory, Jefferson Moss, Kevin Stratton, Senator Kirk Cullimore, someone from the Office of the Attorney General, Dan Burton, someone from the Office of Mike Lee, Gary Crittenden, former CFO of Citigroup and CFO of American Express, someone from the Governor's Office, Sophia DeCaro, Hugh Hansen, FinTech executive, Howard Headley, the president of the Utah Bankers Association. And, the shock to me was to meet a Federal Reserve former Vice Chairman, Randy Quarles. I mean, that was just incredible how you pulled them together.
Yeah, we were just very grateful for their willingness to serve on that. And that's, part of, I think, one of the great elements of Utah is just people are willing to get together and work and talk about ideas and figure out solutions. So really grateful for the people willing to volunteer.
Well, did anything surprise you in the findings? I mean, they produced a tremendous report. And I've read it multiple times, shared it with every state we're working with. I mean, these guys got it right. Did anything surprise you when you were studying it?
I think there was a lot that came out of it. I learned a lot of, important information. I don't know if I was surprised as much as I was just grateful and honored for all of the input that we received. This idea that we need or could provide citizens of the state and the state of Utah alternative ways to transact. I think that was a really important element that came out of the study and had wide support. Just this idea that people should be free to choose how they want to transact in an economy, and could we do something that could facilitate.
Yeah, well, what impressed me was, even though there were differing opinions on whether or not the dollar had a strong long future or a short future, everybody agreed that Utahns ought to have the opportunity to transact in gold and silver or dollars as they see fit. And I saw that you met with Thomas Hoenig, who is, Federal Reserve president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, member of the Open Market Committee. And here's a warning. It says he warned that Washington is ignoring the severity and unavoidable consequences of ongoing debts and deficits, and he recommended that state leaders ensure ample reserves and express support for Utah's efforts to use gold as an alternative source of value. I mean, you went straight to the top across the board, and they came up with the conclusion that Utah has this option and the citizens ought to be able to do it.
Yeah, and this is part of the beauty of our system is that we have 50 states that are sovereign, and we can decide what is in our best interests, and other states can join in that effort, and it's a great model for the country as a whole, and I think people saw this as an opportunity to weigh in on an important issue as inflation has wreaked havoc on people's ability to really keep their purchasing power. And so, a lot of things came together, and we hope that it provides an example for other states that they can follow.
Well, and you've been following up. Representative Ivory has a new bill that he put in that won unanimously in the House, which is amazing. And you testified just by going through the study findings. But you raised a point about other states. I know there's an interest in Oklahoma, in Texas, in Florida, in Louisiana, and so forth. Your colleagues that are treasurers or CFOs or comptrollers, they would like to work together. Is that something that you see possible happening in the future where multiple states work together to help their citizens?
Absolutely. And I think it's important that we do, because one of the elements of gold and silver today that makes it difficult is the taxation treatment. And so the more that states work together, I think that brings more power to the table in arguing that if gold and silver is being used in transactional ways like money, that it shouldn't be taxed.
Well, thank you so much, Treasurer. I appreciate it. You're a great friend of the Economic War Room. Hey, look, we're facing an economic war both from the outside and the inside, woke, DEI, ESG, and there's great people like Marlo Oaks and Ken Ivory that are helping us combat that. Now, we're going to summarize all of this in our free economic battle plan. You can get a copy at economicwarroom.com. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.